Hi there, I'm Lynne Cazaly, and welcome to this short session about better ways of working, and particularly better ways of working for schools. My name's Lynne Cazaly, and I'm an expert in ways of working, that is, looking at what we're doing, how we're doing it, and why we're doing it. And are there some better, easier, quicker, more creative, more productive, more effective ways to do that? I'd like to acknowledge the owners of the land on which I'm standing, that is the traditional owners of the Yalukit Willam. They're the river people in Port Melbourne, in Australia. So over the next 30 minutes or so, and speed it up if you like, I'll be talking through the Better Ways of Working program that I'll be offering to schools in 2023. So a lot of the information is included on the website, but I wanted to really talk through some of this and expand on it and give you some examples of what it means to work in better ways. So I'll share some information as we go through and see if this is applying to you, relevant to your school, and the way that you're thinking and working at the moment. In the work that I do, I'm often speaking to groups, training, facilitating, delivering information and advice on how we can find better. That is an improvement or an enhancement or something that makes the work that we're doing more effective. And over the last couple of years, of course, we've been thrown into all sorts of situations where we've had to rapidly make changes, and they may not have been the way we would like them, but they are the way they are. And so we've looked at, how can we change this again? How could we continue to improve on this? So I'm really excited to be bringing better ways of working, or let's call it BWOW. Sounds good. Let's BWOW into schools in 2023. So let's have a look through some of the challenges that have been pressuring us, certainly when we look at old ways of working. And so think back to where you learned to work. Where did you learn work from, or who did you learn it from? A lot of us, of course, have learned work ethics and work practices from our families, but also think back to the first jobs that you had and the practices that bosses or leaders might have demonstrated for you, or I guess suggested to you that this is the way that we're going to do it around here. The trouble with old ways of working, and they are very much last century ways, they can often leave us feeling exhausted. We tend to do a lot of wasteful work, overwork, chopping and changing, multitasking, context switching, a lot of these things that have now been revealed to be highly unproductive, but also not so good for our brain and how we like to take information in. So when we can start to improve on our ways of working and really have a look at what are we doing and how are we doing it, we can shift from this feeling of exhausted. Yes, okay, we're going to go through this level of being overloaded, and a sense of feeling I could be scattered. I'm trying to do this and I'm trying to do that. So some people who don't feel as exhausted or as overloaded, often they are switching from one thing to another, and they can feel like their day is just a series of 300 different tasks. And it's this sort of thing that can really wear us down over time. And, we really wait and hang out for the holidays. When we look at new ways of working, it really is about shifting above a kind of invisible line, a mental line, and we start to get into ways that have been proven to be highly effective. So we learn these new ways, we start to adapt our behaviours, and we begin to achieve more than we thought possible. But this is not just about a shift in productivity. New ways of working are sweeping the world, so says Steve Denning, a great writer and a consultant and advisor on agile ways of working. His book called The Way of Agile, The Agile Way, The New World of Agile, a little agile-ish. And his book really talks about the observations that he's made with businesses who are shifting from these old, clunky, mechanical ways of working into new, positive, and I guess flexible ways of working for the future. The way of agile. So the big question I'd love you to have a think about is, how are we actually making the work easier that we're doing? How do we make the work that we're doing easier? Or are we continuing to stay with old ways of doing things, the ways that perhaps haven't shifted for many years? Do we still follow the same sorts of processes? So with better ways of working, what we start to look at is the mindsets we have, the behaviors we start to adopt in doing our work, the tasks that we select to do, and importantly, the processes that we follow. So these might be processes that are imposed on us from outside organisations or authorities, or they could simply be processes that we think are the right way to do things. Therefore, we have a bit of a further look at the actions that we take to achieve something, and we also have a look at the tools that we use to do the job. You'll notice that we don't look at the tools first. When we start to look at tools or applications or technology or methods, we can be looking for something that will fix the situation perfectly. And my view is we're looking at our ways of working from the wrong angle. Let's start with the sort of mindset we have towards the work that we're doing and then work up through these. How do we behave? What tasks do we do? And then what processes are we follow to complete those tasks? What steps and actions are we taking? And what tools are we using to help us work in better ways? So one of the 3 key ways that make work easier is this first one, is identifying efficiencies in what we're doing. I think we can learn a lot from the Toyota way, how vehicles have been manufactured through the wonderful lean manufacturing process adopted by the Toyota Motor Corporation. And what they had a look at were all sorts of practices, not just on the shop floor, but throughout the whole organisation, throughout leadership, throughout training and development, through human resources, through high levels of leadership, the finance, marketing, all areas of the business. And they had a look at the things that were leading to greater efficiencies. Now, it's not all about this. There's a couple of other things we have a look at. And building on new ways of working and agile ways of working, what we can also do is have a look at where are we being wasteful with our energy, with our effort, with our attention. And this happens throughout the day. Before, when I was mentioning about feeling scattered, it's a highly inefficient way to work. I know there can be interruptions and times when we're, taken off a task and put onto another task. But these can also waste our energy, waste our resources, waste our mental resources. And we also want to have a look at a couple of other areas, including overwork. That is where we're working on something too much, where we're putting too much effort into something depending on the results that are required. And also the wasteful task of rework. We've started something, we might not be happy with it, and we go back to the beginning and start all over again. And I was working on this topic with a school group recently, and they realised they'd done this a couple of times. They'd embarked on some new work and new projects. They weren't happy with their progress on them. So they said, stop everything and let's go back to the beginning. Oh my goodness, the rework is so wasteful and can be quite demoralising. Another way for us to make work easier is to learn clever hacks, not computer access hacks, but shortcuts or smart cuts, as some people talk about them. These are ways that we can make the work that we're doing more modern. And so a lot of technology companies today who've adopted agile practices or agile ways of working, we're going to borrow a few of their tactics and techniques and tools, not all of it. We're going to take a bit of it and bring these in to the ways of working. And what this gives us, of course, is a beautiful focus on modern ways of working that are this century versus last century ways of working. So better ways of working, particularly for schools. I've been leading new and better ways of working workshops and keynotes and training and advice for a number of years. And in 2023, I want to target specifically at schools. I've seen and experienced the stress and pressure and overwhelm that so many schools and education practitioners have suffered and experienced. And I know that I can help alleviate some of that. So my intention in 2023 is to bring this Better Ways of Working program specifically into schools, school groups and education communities. Now, if you're watching this and that's not you, that's okay, because I still deliver Better Ways of Working for all sorts of organisations, from logistics and transport to government, to health and social services, to media and advertising, to technology companies, to banking and finance. The skills and the practice and the application of better ways of working, look, show me an industry where they won't work. I don't think it exists. I believe that new and better ways of working are applicable, and we're able to introduce them into absolutely any field, any type of practice. And importantly, we can start with the individual. In our day, we can work in new and better ways. We don't have to wait for the whole organisation to shift, nor do we even have to wait for a team to shift. So through this program, I'll be looking at ways that individuals can take that innovative responsibility to start working in better ways, to kind of inspect their ways of working and see how might I be able to do this in a different, new or more innovative or flexible way. So let's run through what's included in the BWOW program for schools. These are listed on my website here, but wanted to talk through these so they're clear and make perfect sense to you. 7 sessions, and we can schedule them whenever you like, online, right? But they're live. So this is not some recorded thing I've pre-done and you watch them. This is live, delivered live for your school group. Remotely using something such as Zoom or Teams. There are 7 sessions and they're 55 minutes long. Why 55 minutes? Well, that's one of the new ways of working. Instead of booking things out for an hour or an hour and a half, we give ourselves a little break at the end. So 55-minute sessions are already starting to get you thinking in new ways if your school isn't already working in this way. So these sessions will be engaging, they'll be facilitated just for your school, and it will be by me live. The sessions, I can guarantee, will have fresh thinking and fresh tools and ideas and resources. And this is the sort of feedback I frequently get from the live sessions that I run. Wow, it was so engaging, it was captivating, I learnt new things, it was interactive. You know, so the chat box is always open. People switch their microphones on and contribute. We share and exchange stories and learning and observations. And I'm introducing new ways of thinking and new ways of working. Now, you can have up to 500 attendees from your school attend the live sessions. It's hosted on Zoom. This is only the limit of what Zoom prevents. So it's up to you. If you've got 150 people at the school who'd like to participate, come along. But if you've got up to 500, feel free to extend it to your wider school community. Now, it's not just the 55-minute sessions. For each topic, there'll be some resources. I'll have downloadable resources, practical, so there'll be some activities and learning to do there on each topic. That could include some reading. Some of the great reading that's coming out of the Agile world is very fresh and new from conferences that are happening all the time. We'll be able to tap into and really curate that content for you. So as you go through the 7 topics, it will be really fresh content. Now, replays. Yes, if staff, team members can't make the live session, then the recordings will be available to you, to anyone in the school. So even if we've got 500 people coming and there's more people who'd like to learn, then the recording will be available to them. Now, here's where it's going to be available. I'll have a private network for you, an online community network. It's private, it's in your name, it's not on existing social media. So relax about that. It's not in Facebook, it's not in LinkedIn, it's in my private network. And what you'll get is the recordings for each of the 7 sessions will sit in there, and people will be able to log in and watch them, replay them, pause, rewind, download the resources whenever they like. Plus, there's also plenty of chat functions in there, so people will be able to engage in interaction, you know, with each other, or make comments about how they're trying out the new practices and how they're working for them. So the pricing details for this are listed on the website, and I do have an early bird offer for those who are looking at this in 2022 and thinking about how they might bring ways of working into their school in 2023. Let's have a look at the 7 topics, because I know you're wondering, what are we going to learn though? This all sounds good, Lynn. What are we going to learn? We're going to start off with a session about why better ways of working are sweeping the world. And what are they? What are these better ways of working? So as a day unfolds in our job role, how might better ways of doing things come into our schedule? And I'll also be sharing some of the benefits and the realised outcomes that organisations are experiencing when they do transition to these better ways of doing things. So this will give you a good foundation for why it's happening, why the transformation's underway, and why many organisations have found not only increased engagement and retention, but also greater productivity gains. Got to also mention the well-being side of things. You know, we can often be so overwhelmed and overloaded by our workload. Better ways of working have been shown to actually lift people's, I guess, levels of happiness, levels of motivation, levels of camaraderie, because they're going, wow, this is a really interesting way to do this task, or I hadn't thought about that before, or that's a really cool hack. Thanks for that tip. So these fresh techniques, and I think there are about 60 to 70 different types of better ways of working techniques. We won't cover them all, but I will certainly take you through the ones that are having the biggest impact for people, and they are the most enjoyable, right? They're the most impactful and enjoyable for people. The second session is all about the individual. Remember before I mentioned that we don't have to wait for a whole organisation to start implementing new ways. We can start today. We can start shifting the way that we work, the tasks that we choose, the mindset we have, the processes we follow. So this second session, this second 55-minute session, is on individual effectiveness. And it'll look at some of the things that we do that slow down our effectiveness and that also distract us or distract our brain from the tasks at hand. I've run this session several times for some large clients. Their logos are on my website. And look, the teams have been going, thank you. I'm finally getting to grips with what my day is about, what my week is about, what the year is about, and becoming not only more personally effective at work, but it's transferring to home. It's transferring to home and family life. And so certainly talk to people who've been bringing BWOW to their family life and running their homes, their kitchens, their school runs, their holidays, their backyards, their kitchens. They're running things in different ways. And guess what? It's engaging the kids more. So personal effectiveness for the individuals is session 2. Now, session 3, I've mentioned the brain a couple of times, and this feeling of overwhelm or overload, absolutely constant, particularly with this flood of information that we have to deal with all the time. So there's a specific session on the latest thinking around cognitive load coping. How do we work with the capacity that our brain has, that is our short-term memory, and how do we consolidate things into long-term memory? And so we'll be looking at how to best work with our brain so that we can take in more information, process, store it, access it, retrieve it, use it, remember it or not remember it, the best way that we can. I've read that our brain's been likened to a kind of food processor, that it will take information in, it will blend it, store it, mix it, and it takes out the trash when we fall asleep at night. So this topic on cognitive load coping, love it. It can make a real difference to the way that we set up our day, how we run our week, or how we might work with information each day. Session 4. This one might be a little unexpected, but it's the topic of perfectionism. And it's related to one of the books I've written called Ish, The Problem with Our Pursuit for Perfection and the Life-Changing Practice of Good Enough. Perfectionism is absolutely on the rise, and this is why I've tackled it in the ways of working. It's very much a mindset, and it's also a generational thing. So we have learned perfectionism, usually from family, community, and it's come through many generations. But we don't have to keep following perfectionism. The downsides are many, and I can run and have run whole sessions for organisations, multiple hours and multiple days on the topic of perfectionism. But we'll have a look in a 55-minute session, the problems with going for perfect and that mindset, and the alternative. There are alternative ways of working that are modern, that we can learn from fields like software developers, technical specialists, and people who create and produce and deliver things, and deliver great quality things, functional, high value services. This will be a great session on perfectionism. And, you know, I only have to mention words like dishwasher stacking or laundry folding, and people realize, yes, we can have very different standards and expectations for how we want something to be done. This translates and transfers into our work life as well, that people have expectations and standards about how they think things should be done. Let's move on to session number 5. It's all about being creative and resourceful. This is the ability to be ingenious, to use what we have, to not want more, but to say, if these are the resources we have, if this is the budget, if these are the people, if these are the tools, what do I do with them? And this is really requiring a greater creative mindset from us, instead of saying, if we had this budget or if we had this equipment, but if we don't, then how do we solve the problem? And we certainly see from people like the World Economic Forum and Institute for the Future, both indicating the continued rise of creativity skills and the need that work of the future has for creativity. We simply don't have enough of it, or we don't put enough of our creativity to work. So this session will give your team plenty of tools and techniques on how to be resourceful using what you've got. There's some great skills that we can learn from the world of improvisation. Many improvisers use nothing but their imagination and the performers or people around them. We can learn some great skills from them. Session 6 on the topic of sense making. This was one of the things the Institute for the Future said we'd need in the 2020s, this ability to work out what's the deeper meaning about what's going on, what's happening, how do I connect these dots, how do we make a decision rapidly, and then enact that decision. And coupled with this is the skill of visualization. In new ways of working, they'll often talk about it being visual management, and successful project teams will always visualize their work. It's so that the work is transparent, it's able to be seen by other members of the team, and visualization prevents that kind of hoarding and hiding of information that can make progress so difficult. So this will provide you with what I think is the mojo or the confidence to use visual skills more readily, whether it's digital skills, the flip chart, a whiteboard, or a tablet, some other tool, to sketch and create maps and models that help accelerate communication and progress. It's a really powerful part of better ways of working. And then the 7th session, we're going to have a look at the kind of leading edge of modern work. What are some of the other things? If you've started to put these tools, techniques, and methods into practice, what else is there? If you want to go further, if you want to do more, what could that be? And so the area of synchronous and asynchronous work is rising. We might have heard about, of course, in learning, where students who work on something in their own time, in the way that they prefer, is asynchronous work. But coming to school and being in class at the same time together, that's synchronous. So we're seeing a lot of impact of teams who would normally at work say we've all got to meet at the one time, synchronous work, and instead introducing more and more asynchronous work. That is, I'll do this task at a time and in a way that suits me, not in a lazy way, but in a more collaborative process way. It's often likened to handing on the baton. So someone might work on a certain task and hand it over to the next person, who then finishes and completes the task. It's a deep topic, synchronous and asynchronous work. But in this final topic and session on modern work, I'll share with you what many of the leading companies are doing. Once they've got personal effectiveness in place, and they've got cognitive load coping, and they're already dealing with perfectionism, and they're being creative and resourceful. They're using sense making and visualization. They'll often say, okay, now what? And so this is what the 7th session is about. As I mentioned, there's many more topics, but I think these are the ones that have been showing the greatest engagement, the greatest return on investment, and greatest return on time. We'll also see that people adopt these practices much more readily than having to sit through or be certified or study, heaps of information over a longer period of time. These are quite quick sessions with great transfer of skill and practical application. It's what makes the topics exciting. So a couple of case studies to talk through. The New South Wales Clinical Excellence Commission. I worked with them on some new ways of working. They had 80 team members working in silos in what they'd call slow and obsolete ways. Change was difficult, mindsets were stuck, and market opportunities could have been missed. So when we worked through a full day's program, very similar to this, we ended up with teams who were able to self-organise. They were able to think and work differently. And we started to use some of the tools from agile ways of working: sprints, backlogs, personas, visual management, sense making, and facilitation. Many of the techniques and tools that I'll share with you in this program. And what was great to see them doing is work on real life situations. So they were applying new skills and new ways of working to existing challenges. It was a fantastic session and was making lots of changes for them as they returned to work. And as they applied those changes to their daily work, I received lots of messages after this session saying how people had instituted the change, how they had started making shifts in the way that they did things, that they were way more conscious of whether something could have been an old way of working and maybe there was a new way of working. And just this mindset shift, the curiosity about, is there an easier way to do this? Am I making this harder for me and others? Was a huge outcome from this session. Some other work I've done with Metro Trains Melbourne over a number of years, working with the senior leadership team and many different levels of the organisation. Of course, they were challenged with ageing network infrastructure and dated systems, but we worked with the top 100 leaders and looked at innovative performance. We looked at idea generation, there's that creativity, and looking at strategy and planning and collaborating in better ways. And so what they were able to do by implementing better ways and thinking of working, they've been achieving greater project targets. They've strengthened their connections with their stakeholders outside, including places like government and policymakers. And one of those huge measures for something like public transport is that customer satisfaction went up, employee engagement went up. So this is some of the theme I was talking about earlier, that people have a stronger sense of interest in work again. Work feels new to them because they are working in new ways. And then the third example I want to share with you was the NDIS, the National Disability Insurance Service. And so I've worked with the several teams there, but one team in particular were looking for some new ways of working when they run meetings, and particularly public meetings. So they'd often have to deal with difficult questions, complex issues, and a community that is hungry for information. So we applied some of the new ways of thinking and working and applied them to how they run their meetings. So now they use many more visual skills and sense-making skills, and we also brought in better meeting leadership, more facilitation skills to make things easier. It's been lovely to see how they've used better ways of thinking and working, not just for their own work, but for their interaction with clients, individuals, and the community. I think they're running better public meetings, they're responding to community needs better, and their engagement with stakeholders absolutely better. So some of the schools I've worked with or am working with on better ways of working for schools, and I could tell you a little story about each of these and the sorts of work I've done, but please know that in offering better ways of working to schools, I've been trying out various elements of these programs and these 7 sessions with each of these organisations, and testing out what's been working, what's resonating, what's not, improving and evolving the program. And some people worry, oh, it's online, it might be a bit. No, it's not going to be dull at all. Always engaging. You'll see I'm broadcasting today from my studio, which has a flip chart. I use digital visual representations, share slide decks as I'm doing now. We use breakout rooms for conversation and sharing, and the chat box. We use other third-party tools, for example, Mentimeter and other sorts of tools where we get engagement, contribution and participation. And we have a laugh, okay? So very participative, captivating, live and engaging with new skills. And because it's live, online, people can access this, of course, from anywhere. So any location across your school or community, but also if people are working from home or they're wanting to access information after hours, this is the one module. And so we took some photographs of where the team was accessing information, some of them from their desk, some of them while they're on the move. There was even a couple of teams who've been listening and re-listening to the sessions while they were commuting, driving, catching the train, walking. And of course, the recordings, resources are available for you in your own private network after the sessions. So just to recap, the Be Well program for schools in 2023, 7 sessions online, live. These are 55-minute sessions. You can have up to 500 people attending and more who can then access the recordings. There'll be resources and learning materials for each topic. And of course, the replays available in the private network. So check out the pricing details on my website. And I'm certainly looking forward to working with some more schools in 2023 to get from old ways of thinking and working, where we might be exhausted, overloaded, or scattered in our thinking, and get up into this space where we're learning new ways of working. We're learning better ways to choose the tasks we do, the order in which we do them, the way that we collaborate, or the methods that we use, and therefore adapt to the changing requirements of work, which then, of course, makes us more able to achieve the things we wanted to achieve. I'm Lynne Cazaly. If you'd like more information, drop me a message via the contact form on my website. info@lynnecazaly.com is the email address, or lynne@lynnecazaly.com. And get in touch with me. Let me know when you'd like to run this sort of program, and the 7 topics, we will schedule them at times that work for you and your school community. So there is a limited number of schools that I'll be able to work with. It's not a never-ending list, so get in touch promptly if this is something you'd like to pursue in 2023. And if you're watching this in 2023, it may not be too late. Get in touch. Let's see what we can do with your school or group or community about having a look at the ways of working. They've been sweeping the world in so many other sectors, and my view, and the view of many others in the education space, is that we need to have a look at how we're working in all aspects, not just in the classroom, but looking at how we work in our administrative areas, in our leadership areas, in how we're learning, how we're transferring information, how we're planning and strategizing, even how our school committees and leadership teams are working. And it would be my pleasure to do that with you and your school community in 2023. Look forward to the potential and possibility of working with you then.